It's a beautiful Sunday evening. It is live on Joy 99.7 FM. And our quote to start the show today: life is full of tricky snakes and ladders. And live from digital address GA09933341. Good evening. And with that popular quote from English musician Morrissey, I welcome you to Springboard, your virtual university. My name is Albert Okran, and I'm here with the virtual academic board chaired by Comfort, with Matthew, Priscilla, Amos, Emmanuel, and Jojo in full swing. Springboard is brought to you by Legacy and your superstation Joy 99.7 FM, proudly sponsored by MTN, the nation's #1 network, with support from the graphic business. Thank you for joining us tonight on Joy FM and on Facebook, streaming live on Albert N.E. Okran and Comfort Okran A. Springboard came to an end. That is the road show yesterday at the University of Cape Coast Examination Center, the large examination center. And once again, we had the privilege of hanging out with a massive crowd of over 2,000 students and other participants, and of course, many of you online across the nation and across the globe. And the highlights of yesterday's event include the presentations and the colloquium handled effectively by Georgina Fiagbenu and Comfort Okran, and of course the moderation by Petra Asamoah, keynote address by myself, and then the talent show. We're going to break the whole show down in a few moments, but let me welcome everyone tonight to what promises to be a very, very serious unpacking of the entire Springboard experience. And just for the benefit of those who may not have followed the road show, this is the 13th edition of the Springboard Road Show, and it started from Kumasi on the 9th of March at the Calvary Charismatic Center, followed by the Global Convocation, that huge event that took the nation by storm, on the 16th of March. And then yesterday was the grand finale at the Cape Coast University on the 30th of March. 3 events in 3 locations, regional events, and of course, several of you joining us across the globe by the power of technology. I have in the studios here someone who has been a participant, a speaker, a judge in the talent show, and now Charlie MC Bakupe. Petra Asamoah, good to see you.
Good evening, Reverend.
Charlie, yesterday, hey, oh Lord of mercy. Charlie, one word. Describe it in one word.
Exciting. That's just the one word that comes to mind. Exciting. It was very exciting for me.
What was the big? Well, I mean, I will unpack it step by step. But where did you feel like, Charlie, this is it?
Well, the crowd was very responsive. The audience was just very engaging, and they were in the moment throughout the program. And I mean, keeping young people engaged from 12 to 5 p.m.
5 hours non-stop. It was like carnival.
That's no mean feat. It was a very engaging audience, and so for me that was one of the big parts. But all of the presentations were super. The wow moments were very, very inspiring, and then the talent expose.
You tried singing at some point.
Yes.
MC singing with the participants. I'll tell you what. I'll come to you, Jojo. Let me find out for you what for you was. What for you is that one word you used to describe the Cape Coast experience?
Wow.
All right, so you tell me, for you, looking at the show from beginning to end, what was that one moment where you felt we clipped it?
I think the moment for me was during the talent expose, when as soon as he started painting, and I was wondering whose face he was going to paint, and I think I had a hunch for the first one that it was going to be yours, and so when he flipped it, I was just like, he has to win for me, and so it was very entertaining to watch.
So let me ask you too. I mean, I'm going to bring on Miles Hagan in a couple of minutes. I mean, Miles is the head of channels at UMB. They sponsor the talent show. I'm going to find out from Miles which of the 3 talent shows for him was exceptional. But before we get to that, I mean, let's start with the content. Let's start with the main reason why we're there. I mean, you can get so overwhelmed by the frills and the and the add-ons that we forget the theme and the reality of what we gathered those people for. So we did Kumasi, we did Accra, and then we did Cape Coast. So Petra, in terms of presentations, I mean, just pick out a couple of highlights that you went home thinking about. I mean,
after yesterday, or
let's start with yesterday's.
Okay.
We'll come back to the convocation shortly.
So for the three presentations, Georgina's presentation being the first one, for me was just the go beyond sea level.
Right.
And how she captured the fact that you need to stretch, explore, and extract.
So her sea was not just the sea as in the Apple.
Yes. So it was SEE.
Right.
And it was important that, for me, I reflected on the part where she tried to explain that the world and the opportunities in the world are enormous. Sometimes we sort of limit what we see as opportunity, and we need to expand the scope of what we perceive as our opportunities. And tying that into the theme of the digital revolution, it made me more aware that we need to think about how can digital and us using digital tools help us take advantage of all of these opportunities that are out there that we haven't really conceptualized properly or become aware of. And so for me, that was the takeaway on that. And she just simplified it very well. First of all, telling us to get up and stretch, and using the imagery of you need to take up more space. So you can't just be satisfied with, I'm here, I'm sitting in this chair, I'm in Ghana, and that's it. There's so much more we can do. There's so much more space in the world that we can occupy if we take advantage of the right tools and the right opportunities.
And that was a takeaway from Gina. Gina's a very good communicator.
Yes, she is.
Yeah.
She is.
Right.
And then Comfort's presentation, she's just sort of shocked us with the statistics and the video on robots.
I love the video of the robot talking to. It reminded me of is that Alexa?
Alexa.
Alexa, yeah.
Alexa, yes.
There's another one that there was another one that another robot that was released. It's amazing. The robot that was having a conversation with somebody in a conference stage. Anyway, so this robot was having a conversation with a woman about jobs. And
Am I going to take over your jobs? How is our relationship going to be like?
Right.
And then she tied that into what the future of jobs is going to be like in the next few years.
Right.
And for me, it just emphasize the fact that we need to also be aware of what's happening. So there were two sets of jobs that would possibly be affected, not just possibly, but imminently be affected by digitization, and jobs that won't really be affected. And then the question is, what next? What do we do? And it was instructive because we're speaking largely to a group of students. And typically young people are thinking, where am I? What am I doing? What's going to happen to me in the future? And how should I make the best out of the opportunities that I have? And so it was important that we left them with the thought of, you can do something about it, you're not helpless. And so that's how we tie that into the colloquium, so that they see that this is where the future is, this is where I am, what can I do to bridge the gap? And that for me was the main takeaway on that. And then, of course, your presentation, the keynote address, Snakes and Ladders, I was just wowed. I mean, I've read portions of the book, but listening to you talk about the ladders, listening to you talk about the confirmer. I've had mentors who just by a simple comment confirmed what I've always known in my heart was something I had to do. But hearing it again just made a lot of sense. And then mentors who won't be all over you saying, oh, you've done so well, you're super. But will just say, it's okay, you've done well. And you go back thinking, I put all my effort into that.
That's not the idea.
You know, I was just nodding. I was thinking, that's true. I mean, you don't expect your mentor to be all over you, rolling over you when you've done something well. You're just supposed to, a slight pat on the back and then continue. Like, okay, you've done well, but don't let it get to your head. Right. So there was that. And then I remember that experience I had with a mentor of mine where, so when I was writing my book, I remember sending you a draft and waiting for your comments, and I had to wait for almost 3 weeks. And I remember thinking, okay, so when am I going to hear back from Reverend? Because I really need to get this thing into print. And when I finally heard back from you, it made a lot of difference, because then we had to change the title of the book. You helped me get the artwork corrected. You even helped me get someone to do the artwork even better than what I was thinking. And it paid off. And so the presentation just explained all of that. That sometimes you think you're on the right track, you're doing everything, up until a mentor says to you, just chill, and gives you a different perspective because they've walked the path already. They know what you're trying to get to. And so listening to that again just sort of gave it more impetus to relax and just be thankful for the people in your life, right, and be aware that they are there for a reason.
Right. So, Jojo, for you, I mean, you and your brother Reku, I mean, I put you guys on the spot, put you on the stage, and asked you about your snakes and your ladders. I mean, for you, reflecting on the fact that over the past year of your life, there have been snakes and there have been ladders, and doing that reflection in the public space, how did it make you feel?
It was interesting because some of the snakes that you encounter in the professional workplace, a lot of them came out during the program, and some of the ladders you encounter, same thing, a lot of them came out during the program. So I think even listening to Ms. Fiagbenu's presentation, where she was talking about the fact that volunteering is an incredibly powerful way of positioning yourself in the workplace. And another thing she also mentioned that really resonated for me was the fact that you need to learn continuously. So keep reading, keep upscaling yourself, even if you are not currently undergoing formal education. So I thought those were the two biggest ladders for me that I saw in my daily life. So it was very like a confirmer.
Yeah.
You know, hearing somebody who's been there, done that, say that, okay, so the things that you find important really do make a difference over the long term.
It's 60 minutes past the hour of 7, and if you just joined us, we're talking about the Springboard Road Show. Yesterday was the final event in Cape Coast, and Cape Coast is the unofficial headquarters of Springboard in Ghana. Accra is for the corporates, the nice pictures, the huge crowd, and the well-behaved audience. But Cape Coast is for the raucous, exciting experience, and there's something you get in Cape Coast that you won't get anywhere else in Ghana. I'm telling you something. Cape Coast is that place where you go when you want the fun part of Springboard, as in to head to the very highest level. Yesterday, it didn't let us down. Cape Coast maintained their record as the place where the action resides. I'm going to put Miles Hagan on there. He said some. He gave some superlatives about his Cape Coast experience. All those who haven't traveled before, you sit in Accra, you think you've seen Springboard. You just have to go to Cape. When you come back, you'll be converted. Next year, all of you pack your things. Let's go from Accra to Cape and experience Springboard, the road show in Cape Coast, where Springboard is always at its best. Let's come to the question time. Which one question, Petra, came up that you felt was there's one question that I can tell you. I've been in all three cities, and I know one question came up in all three cities. But for you did Accra and you did Cape Coast. Which question was key for you? Which question is it that people were asking that you found very key?
So it was the question about what do I do if my dream job is one of those jobs
that's the question.
Good, yes.
That question came up in every city.
Okay.
Yep. Every single city.
Okay.
So ask the question.
And
ask it
so
now, and then let's talk about it.
What do I do if my dream job is on that list of jobs that's going to be affected by digitization? And that for me was it. Because for a young person to think about, okay, so I'm not hopeless and I can't be helpless. I have to figure out what can I do. It was important. It made me aware that these young people are thinking the right direction and that we can provide answers to them was even more important. So they leave with a sense of, I can make a difference. There's something I can do. Because we know that there's always the struggle when you're in school of, is what I'm studying going to end me up anywhere important? I mean, I've met young people very recently who said to me, I'm studying marketing, and everybody tells me, what can I do with that? Or I'm studying philosophy, or I'm doing classics, or I'm studying one of these liberal arts courses, and I don't get a sense of where is that leading me to. And so that question just sort of gave us the opportunity to tell them, wherever you are, you need to take charge and have a clear path of how you're going to move forward.
Interestingly, Petra, I'm going to one of these days play back the message that I shared in Kumasi, because among other things, I also give 10 jobs that exist today that didn't exist 10 years ago. So if the job that you are studying for is shrinking, it doesn't mean it will whittle out altogether, but it will shrink.
Yeah.
I mean, Ace once said to me, listen, law in its raw form is becoming redundant because technologies are unraveling the cases and the issues, and so it will require some value added delivery to be relevant going forward. And it's the same thing in every other field of endeavor. The routine parts of every single job will be shaken by technology in the years ahead. But those who lean towards adding more value, exploring adjacencies, multi-skilled preparation will definitely always have an advantage.
Exactly.
And so what the bigger question is that every statistic that we have looked at says that for every job that is lost, 3 will be created.
Which is the part that most times gets lost in the conversation. People think about digital being a disruptor and a negative disruptor,
a devourer.
Rather than creating opportunity. So we really have to think about it also as creating opportunities for us to be better. And I remember that was one of the points that Comfort emphasized on quite well, that the point of it is we need to take advantage of the opportunities to have a better output. And so whatever we're doing, wherever we are, we need to ask the question of how can we use digital to make our lives and our outcomes better than what they were before.
Right. Let me bring on at this point my friend Miles Hagan. He's the head of channels at UMB. Miles was one of the new converts of Cape Coast yesterday because he found out that his great experience in Accra that he spoke about so much, he found out that Cape people to the day. Miles, good evening.
Good evening, Reverend.
Tell me your Cape Coast experience in one word.
I'll say fantastic. I was just spellbound by everything that happened. It was just amazing.
Charlie, tell me, how do you describe this experience to somebody who wasn't there? I mean, one of the things that I've struggled with over the years is how to describe Springboard to somebody who wasn't there. I find it very difficult. Do you have the same challenge?
Oh, I do. But I'll say for yesterday, if I were to describe it, I'll say look out for the biggest crowd. That's where Springboard is, because the place was overpacked. Our stand was overwhelmed. I'd say everyone who was there was just excited to be there, and that's how that feeling should be. Just wanting to hear something new, to be edified in a great way, and definitely Springboard has brought that to the masses. So it was just amazing.
I hear the commercial person in you say that our stand was overpacked. I know that's your first interest, but let's go to your second interest, which is the learning. Let's start with the learning. Charlie, sitting through those presentations as a corporate person yourself, climbing up the corporate ladder. Yes. What was your one takeaway?
For me, I would say the ladders and the snakes, definitely, because even in our career, it gets to a stage where you want to do something, but the question is, are you doing enough? And to have an idea of what you need, especially knowing that you need either a mentor, a counselor, someone who can encourage you, even knowing the destiny connectors, because you could be in a top position, but you never know. There's a bigger opportunity out there, and by God's grace, if you are connected with a destiny connector, you can imagine where you will be. You yourself could be a destiny connector for someone. And if we are able to discover these at such a great platform, you can imagine the future. It means we can always get to the very top once we do what we have to do to the best of our abilities. And for me, that's one thing I really took away.
Let's settle on the point of greatest interest to you, and by extension, your UMB, the talent expose.
That's right.
This year, I mean, the talent expose is a new intervention introduced this year on the Road Show, and your organization is the main sponsor of that intervention. And so, traveling with this intervention to Kumasi, Accra, and Cape Coast, what are your impressions on the experience?
I'll say the future is very bright. It was great meeting. A cyber. I'll just say, I was just spellbounding to know that you can actually have a group have developed a platform which can help someone by speaking, then create a Facebook platform or even a page on Twitter. That was just amazing. And beyond that, in terms of the singers, in terms of even the artist was just amazing. To think he was able to draw you upside down, and then we look at the picture and it's like, yes, that is indeed Reverend Albert. And then do likewise for Mrs. Okran. It was just amazing. And I think if we get a lot of people to try and then discover their inner talent, you can imagine where Ghana will be, because people have so much, but unfortunately these platforms are not there. So having such a talent platform makes it possible for us to discover and even help certain companies know who to nurture that talent. And then before long, we'll be doing so many wonderful things in our country.
Right. So, Miles, it was nice of you to join us all the way to Cape, and I'm glad that you enjoyed it as much as we did. And so, signing off in this conversation, what's your one thought you would like to leave with our listeners about Springboard and about your experience?
I'm looking forward to next year's one, and I'm wishing we may find another place to do it. So, possibly aside Accra, Kumasi, Cape Coast, maybe Takrady or even Tamale. And I'm sure we'll get a lot of people to come and then fill the place capacity like they have done in all the other places. But definitely, I'm really looking forward to the next number of years that we can go on doing all these wonderful things, because it's a great experience.
Charlie, just pull out a checkbook and the Lord will speak. Thank you very much, Miles Hagan. All right, so that Miles Hagan, the head of channels at UMB, just hanging out with us on the Cape Coast experience. If you were in Accra or Kumasi or Cape Coast on the road show, I'm sure you have your own experience that you want to talk about. Let me come back to Petra Asamoah and Jojo Okran as we look at the talent show. Why is everybody talking about the talent show? And for many of you online, I mean, Isaac Chukwu was the star that got everyone talking. Yesterday, Facebook was literally bombing because of Isaac, and rightly so, Petra. Yeah. Rightly so. I mean,
his talent was just phenomenal. His display of it. And after the show, I said to him, "You're in a class of your own.
Confidence."
Yes. And this is a young man who you can see has put in a lot of time and effort in honing this talent. He's not at the talent level. He's gotten to the point where he's developed a skill.
Okay.
And his comment at the end of it was very instructive. He said, whatever your talent is, just keep pushing. Keep putting in more effort. People might not believe in you. And he made the comment about being compelled by parents and family to get a regular job. But this is something he feels he's passionate about. And even if he has to have a job, he still wants to go ahead and do it. And so for me, that's just it's the mark of someone who knows who he is and what he wants.
Now, how big, Jojo, from your perspective, how big was Isaac as a person on the stage in terms of the persona, the delivery, the communication of his skill? How big was he? I mean, he looked to me like the overall, a runaway winner. It wasn't like a contest in terms of...
Exactly. It was a natural.
Before we walked in here, we talked about the fact that we think he could have won at any stage on which he performed. And for me, the reason why his talent
make that point very clear. I mean, if you say on any stage, what does it mean?
I mean, we talked about across the 3 talent shows,
right, between
Kumasi, Accra, and Cape Coast. We felt like he would have been the winner if we combined all of them. Right. But for me, what made it even bigger was that I've seen somebody do a similar thing at America's Got Talent, where the prize is $1 million. So that is the level of talent that we witnessed on the Springboard UMB talent show stage.
We should have $1 million one of these days. So.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right. So Petra, here's somebody who steps out there and says, I can do this. Mm-hmm. Takes on the challenge. You were a judge on the talent show in Accra, and then the moderator for the Cape Coast event. Let me tell you, the transition between we had some very great performances in the semi-final, mm-hmm, and then poor performances in the final, and it happened with the teacher, for instance, in Accra. That act was very nice in the prelims, but the challenge of having to put up another performance in the final, I want you to comment on that part of it.
So, I mean, Reverend, you have this thing you say that when you do something very well once and you can't repeat it, it's intoms.
Right.
So it was a fluke. And I remember we had that difficulty with the audience when we didn't place the teacher and his small crew in the final, because really, when you see talent that has moved from just talent to skill, you can spot it.
Right.
And that was the difference. That was the main difference. So you're thinking, what next? What else can they do beyond the scalability, right, which was actually one of the key criteria in the talent expose. So what else can they do beyond this one time they've done this? And that's one of the things that sets Isaac apart as well. So he didn't just come back in the next round and do another picture. Mm-hmm. He did it differently. He did part of it on the floor. He had three different pieces, okay, yes, to show that I'm at another level. So you come with one act, a very good act, and then you beat yourself to it again to show that you're on top of your game. So that, for me, being a judge and being a moderator, was very obvious in the Cape Coast, especially with Isaac's performance.
Right. So for the benefit of our listeners, I mean, Isaac drew myself in the preliminary round, and he drew it upside down on a single canvas
in under 3 minutes.
And in 3 minutes. And the pictures are on Facebook with so many comments from all over the world about, wow, this is pure talent. And ostensibly, he's built quite a following on Instagram. He's built quite a following from people who have been watching his works. So that was one of the objectives of the talent hunt, or the expose. People who have talent, who are looking for a platform for everyone to see them. That was what happened for Isaac yesterday.
Yes.
People have heard about him, people have seen his work, but yesterday he was the center of attention with people watching from all over the world and commenting. So he drew that in the prelims, and so you get to qualify for the finals. Now the slate is clean. You have two others competing with you, and in this case, it was a dance group and then these amazing software guys. And I'll talk about the software guys in a minute, but so here you are in the final. You need to up the game, and that's the biggest challenge with every performer, the biggest challenge with every artist or a person making an execution. How do you raise the bar when you dance so? And if you put the inferior act in the prelims and you don't qualify, nobody gets to see the big one.
Exactly, and that's the mark of a champion. Consistency is the mark of champions, and it's not just you being at the same level every time. You always have to try and be better, beat yourself every single time. And that's the challenge of anyone who wants to work at peak performance. If you do well the first time, the second time, how do you ensure that you're being better every time you put up a performance? And I feel that Isaac also had a plan. He had a game plan. He couldn't have shown up there and said, okay, my first act is going to be during Reverend Albert, and then what next? He definitely had a plan.
Right.
This is what I was going to do. And that's where sometimes performers have issues. So we can compare with the Accra one. You move someone to the next level, the teacher, for instance, and he didn't really have a plan for the next level.
Right.
Possibly he didn't think he was going to move on. So he did his best, and the next level was subpar. Actually,
we're discussing a particular gospel musician, and we're listening to an incredible song last week on our way to this very show. I mean, Comfort, Jojo and I. And that person released one big hit, and that was it. She didn't release again. So she was like a one-song artist. So if she came for an event and she did that song and you wanted the next song, you will find a very mediocre output, not because that first song was not good, but because that's all that she has. And that's the case with some of the performers that we have seen on the talent show. But what this guy did is that in the final, he brought 3 different canvases, if I may call it that, and put them at 3 different locations, and we'll walk to one and draw something, walk to another one and draw something, walk to the third one and draw something. Painted, yes. Yeah. In 3 minutes, painted on 3 different canvases and mounted the 3 as one, and then that was it. And we got the final output. That for me was like taking a good act to an excellent point.
Exactly.
Let me bring on Matthew, who put this all together. Matthew, yesterday was your day. I mean, your day as in your day, because for you as the person in the engine room putting this all together, I'm sure you looked back at the work and felt a sense of gratitude. What was it like for you yesterday?
It was amazing. And before I even come to that, so that we don't divert from Chukwu's work, I just want to share one thing I noticed about him even before the Saturday final showdown. So we met with me on Thursday. and again on Friday before the final
like
thing.
The prelims, the final selection.
Yes, trying to understand what. And I was extremely convinced as early as Thursday evening that, in my personal opinion, that I was going to win, based on two things that he did. He was prepared for the final show as early as Wednesday evening, he told me. And as of that Thursday that we were doing our first rehearsal, he knew what he was going to do, and he mentioned it to me very clearly that Act 1, this is what I will do. Act 2, this is what I will do. And he mentioned how he was going to do it. My biggest concern was that if you're working with paint, is there the need to provide something, a platform so that you don't soil? He said, no, I don't need that. This is what I need. So he was very clear in his mind what he was going to do. So I wasn't too surprised. And just minutes before he was on stage, the guy was so relaxed and so confident in himself that,
I mean, the confidence was palpable.
It was. So that is what made me extremely convinced, as against others who were not so sure of their act and were trying to find help. Okay, so what do I do? Not that they were not good, but there was one difference between him and then the other ones.
A huge gap.
A huge gap.
Right.
And then one other thing about the Purple Software guys as well. Let me just chip that in. They came.
Let's put perspective on that. I mean, I think that for me, Isaac Chukwu was the runaway winner of the talent show nationally, putting together Kumasi, Accra, and Cape Coast, the overall winner of the talent show. It's a pity he didn't hear about the Accra talent show early and therefore didn't get the big bucks. I mean, he won the Cape Coast prize money, but the Accra prize money was higher. Let's all face it. But he had what it took to have won on the national front, like Juju rightly articulated. So let's put that aside. But the Cape Coast, the act that really, really, really caught my attention, because also of the theme of the road show, was the software guys. And so let's talk about the software guys. The first one was their encryption software. Jojo, that was the first.
Right. So the first software was, well, it's one software, but the first demonstration of the software was its ability to encrypt different media from text files to video files in a way that they were obviously unable to be accessed once the encryption had been put on. And then they showed us obviously how the files could be decrypted and then accessed by the owner of the files. And it was very well demonstrated as compared to other groups in earlier competitions.
So let's stay with that for a minute. What, from the perspective of the user, what did that mean? The encryption, what did it mean to the everyday user of the computer?
Right. So in the past week, there was a hack that exposed about 900 million email accounts. So in an age where you can have almost 1/7 of the world's population being exposed to one data hack, it is pertinent that we're able to keep our data secure. And so being able to actually do that using a technology developed by people just like that, people just like us, people from Ghana, is an exciting prospect.
Right. So you recall that Dr. Totable at the keynote address in Springboard talked about we being not just users, but people who are developing our own and solving major problems that we have. It's a good beginning, and I'm sure we can extend that confidence into areas that healthcare, sanitation, food, and other areas. But Matthew, your interest was in the second act. And again, Petra, you do a first act and you qualify for the finals. And for me, I was telling Gina of MTN, still next to me, that so what will they showcase in the second act? Because you've showed the software already. What will they do? And for me, that second act was
super.
Yeah, voice activated social media servant, as it were. Matthew, you wanted to comment on that
and
one?
Again, let me just step back 24 hours before that final act. The actual thing they presented on stage was, in my opinion, about 100% over what they had done the night before.
Wow.
So the original one was in English, what they presented during the dress rehearsal. And we suggested to them that, in fact, there was one word that it couldn't pick because of possibly the accent of it being English and then the Ghanaian accent. So they said they had to rework the entire software overnight to move from English to the local language so that it could easily pick up, because it's unique to us. The words can be picked up, and they said they spent all night doing that.
So,
and interestingly,
again, listeners, just for your benefit, the software had the name of the software at that time was Jeffrey.
Yes.
And our team just said to them, listen, you are doing something for Ghanaians. Why don't you give it a Ghanaian name? And they came back and it was called Yao.
Yeah.
So that's just to put perspective on it. And the second thing was that you gave the command. It was a voice activated software or app, and you gave the command in English and it spoke back to you in Twi.
Yes.
Another very interesting dimension to that. And Matthew,
one of that very interesting is that these are level 100 students at UCC. So talking to them, they didn't know themselves. They just came together, and within less than a year, they've been able to collaborate to work together as a team, and have developed a software that it can if given the opportunity and given the guidance, can compete at the national and international level.
Right. And it's interesting to note that, I mean, one of our sponsors, MTN, showed an interest in what we're doing, and it's encouraging them to be part of the apps challenge. And that's what this is all about. Mm-hmm. By the time we finished the talent show yesterday, all finalists had been signed on by the incubator program of the University of Cape Coast to be given mentorship and exposed to potential opportunities for funding. I mean, if you didn't get that chance there, where again would you get a chance to showcase what you have? So basically, that's what we are talking about, that chance to get your work seen and your work celebrated at the highest level. Let me take a brief break and bring you a message from MTN. And please, Charlie, if it was possible for our listeners to give a clap to MTN through the radio, I would have asked for it, Charlie. But wherever you are, pause for a moment and think about a company that has sponsored Springboard Road Show for 12 continuous years. That means that they have invested in the emerging leaders of this country 12 consecutive years through different phases of the organization, different CEOs. But one thing has always been clear: a certain consistency of belief in Springboard, not just in the radio show but also in the road show. And MTN has been exceptional in supporting this venture. Let me bring you a message from MTN, and then when we come back, let's begin to unpack the final components of the Springboard Road Show. We also receive our game changer minute from Jojo, and then we'll ask that question: what next? Please don't go away.
So everyone says I'm a Kosia filler, but it's not like I'm nosy or go out to find out the latest filler. It's just that I get 50 megabytes of data free after paying for only the first minute of every call. And so I just keep discovering stuff minute after minute. That's how come I was minding my business, scrolling through my timeline, and I found out Coco has a new baby. Oh, and last week, I learned Ken won the lottery. You see, Ken is my brother's friend. So hello, look who's about to roll with the rich and famous.
Enjoy even more value with MTN Free After One. You only pay for the first minute of your call on MTN Free After One, and the rest is free. Plus, you enjoy free 50 megabytes worth of data to browse your favorite sites. Compare where, compare there. So dial *315# to sign up. We day for you everywhere you go. Terms and conditions apply.
I like the way the audience used to say, we day for you. Charlie, whenever you mention MTN, they say, we day for you. Charlie, when you are sponsoring an event and the audience is so hyped up and they are giving you fans all the way through. All right, so Petra says, Charlie, there's a small boy who won there. We had one secondary school there yesterday. It was, I think it was Swedro Secondary School. And all the rest was university students. And Dr. Otabel has always said that, Charlie, no matter how much the event is packed, we must find space for some secondary school people to sit with the tertiary guys and be inspired. So he always has a special greeting for the secondary school students before he starts speaking. So yesterday we had one school. We didn't major too much on them because the tertiary were the main focus. But we had one secondary school, and interestingly, the final wow moment with the MTN, the phone, the airtime, the books, everything was won by one of the students in the secondary school, and that was just quite special. Petra, you said you were praying for him.
Yes. I mean, when I mentioned the phone number, you mentioned the phone number. the last 2 digits of the phone number. He got up. I just said, "Oh God, let him win." Because last year it was also a young lady from a secondary school who won the final wow moment gift in Accra
on the stage.
Exactly. And so I was just hoping it was him. He didn't look too sure, too confident, but I was just praying that, okay, let it be him. Because then again, it's going to be that defining moment in his young life that he will never forget. And you want a young person like that to leave a Springboard event with a distinctive experience that he will never forget that moment in his life when he won this, but everything about the event will just stick. The things that we said, all of the important things that he heard, he would remember. It would be like a turning point for him as he goes further. Plus you prayed for him on stage. Getting the opportunity to talk to you about what he wants to do. He's always going to remember that day, the day he said, "I want to be a doctor." And so when he ever gets to a point where he has low moments, it will be a time where he will be able to reflect and say, "Okay, let me keep pushing because there's something worth fighting for." And so I'm quite I have a soft spot when it comes to younger people, because they are the future. They really need all of our time and investment, and him being there was also very important. Right. Because he's sitting here. It's possible he's never been on a university campus. He's sitting in the midst of all these university students and older people. He's going to see what the possibilities are.
Right.
It's the examples that they see. It's the opportunity for them to see other people who've been where they've been. And there was a gentleman in the audience who said that was his school.
Right.
And so he's also going to have the opportunity to have a conversation with this older person and possibly start a relationship with him that will also create opportunities for him. So I was just so excited for him winning the final wow package.
Right. I'm going to acknowledge our sponsors, and when I come back to you, Jojo and Petra, I'm going to ask you to sign off on the Springboard 2019 Road Show. This is the final show in our Springboard wrap-up series. I mean, just bringing our listeners the whole roadshow experience. I mean, next week we return to our regular programming with some very interesting things lined up in our African Excellence series, our debate, and everything that we do right here on your virtual university. But let me just have one last acknowledgement of our sponsors on the roadshow. So we'd like to thank MTN for being the main sponsor. We want to thank UMB for sponsoring the talent show, Enterprise Life for traveling with us to the 3 cities and providing wow moments tablet for the various winners, Databank for being consistent with us over the past 13 years from the very first show, Pesol Systems for being a consistent partner of the road show. I want to thank Graphic Business for being the official newspaper, Joy 99.7 FM. Yesterday, Charlie, Joy, the fans we got in, it wasn't easy in Cape Coast. All the way in Cape Coast. It was just very special. Thank you to Dream Mobile, Yep Cleaning Service, and York's Rent-A-Car for providing all the vehicles that took us to Cape Coast and back. And of course, Voltic for the water and juices that we drank at the program. So, end of road show. Great experience. Thousands of participants and several online participants joining us from the various continents of this world. Let me start with you, Jojo. You made during the commercial break, you were talking about the importance of collaboration as regards the software developing group. Let's make that point again for the benefit of our listeners, and let's begin to wind down on the show.
I thought that was Matthew mentioning that they came together as level 100 students to collaborate and write code together. That was mind-blowing for me. That was a real game changer, because when I looked at it, Google itself was started by academics from Stanford. So taking that foundation and looking at the fact that they coded together as a duo, the coders who actually built the Google, Jeff Dean and Sanjay Gemawat, they are at the top of Google's coder list. They are only two level 11 coders at Google, and that's the two of them. They only code together. And so that collaborative process where one focuses more on the minutiae of the code while the other looks at the overarching picture, being able to have that type A and type B personality working together to create a product that really works. And these guys have mastered that as early as level 100 of UCC, and that just speaks to the potential that they have.
Petra, I mean, in your mind's eye, have you seen a possible Amazon, Facebook, Google?
Even bigger.
You may never know.
Yeah. Listening to Dr. Oteville at the convocation, I was just so energized to begin to think more about what can we do for ourselves to take advantage of this revolution. It was instructive to hear him talk about how the slave trade was a default response for our inability to match up to a trade opportunity. And for me, being in that at that point in my life where I'm thinking, how can we impact on our world more than we're already doing now? Looking at them yesterday, I was just so, it was inspiring, it was positive. And now hearing that they're level 100 students, there's more that we can do. And I'm sure there's so many other younger people like that doing amazing things. And it just also wants, I just want to make the point of, so the sponsors who sponsor shows like this, I'm a commercial person, and you always want to look at the bottom line. And if you want to tell a sponsor you would get the benefits in 10 years, it's too long to wait. But I just want to let them know that this is one of those interventions that it takes a while for them to actually, they will get the benefits, all the mentions. I mean, we hyped all of our sponsors a lot yesterday, but this is investing in lives. This is investing in the next generation of Ghanaian people and even other African nationals as well, because people are watching all over the world. And so this is one of those interventions where you want to actually say, if you're a company that is concerned about human capital development, this is where to put your money. This is not plain lip service with it. It's not saying, oh, we care, but we really don't have money to do it. This is where you want to invest in, because in 10 years, I mean, I attended my first Springboard 11 years ago. Osu Presby Hall. I had no imagination, no expectation that I would moderate the event 10, 11 years later, or even be where I am now. And it's just the consistent investment in lives. And it's a great thing that we can do this free of charge so people can attend, but it has to be funded. And this is one of those things where I feel that corporate Ghana should do it, and not just for Springboard, but if you ever have the opportunity to invest in things like this, this is where to put your money, because these young people are the solution providers. They can end up in MTN, end up wherever, providing solutions.
One of these, I'm going to come on this show and mention the number of our current speakers, our current sponsors, our current facilitators, collaborators, and partners who are products of Springboard, and it will shock people.
Yes.
It will shock people. Let's go for the game-changing moment in Jojo. When I come back, Petra and Jojo will tell me their closing thoughts about a Springboard at 13, the 13th edition of Springboard, and what next for the intervention. Jojo, what's our game changer for? And the game-changing moment is that moment where we capture something that has happened most likely on the African continent or across the world that brought about some significant change that we think can be a pointer to people who want to make a difference in this generation. So, Jojo, what did we select for this week?
So this week on The Game Changer, we celebrate Peter Chabichi, a Kenyan educator who was named the world's best teacher. He took home the prize of $1 million after beating 10,000 educators from over 180 countries. Tabichi teaches in a remote town called Pwani Village, where approximately 95% of the students live in poverty, and about 1/3 are either orphans or only have one parent. Students are frequently impacted by drought and famine and are prone to dropping out, with drug abuse, teenage pregnancy, and suicide being some common issues. And every month, Tabichi donates 80% of his salary.
Hold on.
80.
80%.
Tithe is 10.
All right.
And, you know, his generosity for me is not even the game changer here. For me, his biggest contribution is leveraging the power of compassion and diversity. And for me, this principle is central to the impact he's had. Now, Kenya has some challenges with child marriage, which affects education prospects for younger girls. 23% of Kenyan girls are married before their 18th birthday, and a further 4% are married before they are even 15. So to combat this, Tabichi engaged in extensive outreach within the local community. So he engaged the local stakeholders to persuade them of the value of education, encouraging families who are set off to marry their young girls to keep them in school. He then started mentoring the children through a talent nurturing club, and he expanded an existing science club, which caused the enrollments at the school to double in less than 3 years and boosting their college admissions. Now, despite having only one computer for the entire school and sporadic internet access, Tabichi students actually won at the National Science Fair by developing a device to help people who are blind and deaf to measure objects. In addition, he started a peace club to integrate students from 7 different tribes in the school and introduced a common program for the religious representations at the school. And now one might say that diversity is simply a nice to have, but Tabichi's interventions have literally changed the trajectory of these children's lives. 1 year of secondary education for a girl in Kenya corresponds to over 25% increase in wages over a lifetime, and completing secondary school education reduces child marriage by 50%. And in the broader context, Forbes shows that having diversity in a team can increase revenues by over 20%, so this applies to our daily lives. To close, I would like to end with a quote from Mr. Tabichi. Africa's young people will no longer be held back by low expectations. Africa will produce scientists, engineers, and entrepreneurs whose names will one day be famous in every corner of the world, and girls will be a huge part of that story. This has been The Game Changer with Jojo Okran. Have a phenomenal week.
I'm going to add $10 to Mr. Tabichi's 1 million. So we get 1,010,000. Pressure, your thoughts about this one?
Wow. I mean, this is... It is a game changer. Yeah. I mean, if you have to invest in, and the quote at the end that says that we will not be limited by low expectations, that is the takeaway. We can't use the excuse of we're in Africa anymore. It no longer holds. I mean, the world is open to us, and we have to take advantage of the opportunities. But there are limitations like this, and so there are people who have to then be enablers. They have to be destiny connectors. They have to be helpers of people who otherwise won't have the opportunity to take.
And I like the part about girls.
Yes, that for me was
and the statistics about every opportunity created and what the net effect would be.
Yes, and you know, we have the saying that if you educate a male, you educate an individual, you educate a female, you educate a nation. That for me is also very important.
Don't let my mother wake up and call into the station right now. Good evening to you, Mr. Theophilus Yate. I want to celebrate you for giving your mother, Henrietta Yate, a fitting farewell send-off on Friday and through the weekend. I mean, you celebrated her life beautifully at the La Bethel Presby Church and all the various activities. You honored your mother, you celebrated her life, and today I celebrate you for doing what you did along with your siblings in the way that you did it. So we remember the life of Madame Henrietta Anyele, Madame Henrietta Yate, and we say thank God for her life and thank God for her example. And to you, Theophilus, you do all. Right, let me thank you, Petra, and thank you, Jojo, for your thoughts that have been shared tonight. Let me give you 1 minute to wrap up. Any thoughts that you'd like us to sign off on?
Well, I would like to just generally say that everyone who has the opportunity to be part of Springboard should not take advantage of it and keep coming. Don't let it just be once. It should be a constant. For me, it's like a homecoming. Every year, I try not to miss the Accra event because it's just a time where you come back and you listen to very inspirational presentations, but not just inspirational, things that you can actually act on and make a difference. So it's a renewal journey for me every year. And I was so happy that I could do Cape Coast. It's such a different experience.
Let's begin. Let's begin.
I'm definitely going.
Yeah. Challenge, you go to Cape Coast again. I'm telling you. Yeah, you.
I think one of the most poignant things I learned at Springboard this year was just to take one thing and apply it, and that was actually by Petra. So, thanks for the game changer. But I think every year you learn something impactful. I mean, this year, just listening to Doc talk about the fact that if we do not have technology solving African problems, we cannot truly say that we are part of the digital revolution, talking about technology being able to solve problems like nutrition and education that are pertinent to Africans. So I think come to Springboard, find what that big concept is for you, and apply it to your life, and your life will never be the same.
I was talking to a CEO of a technology company. He said that statement by Doc redefined his mission statement for life.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's not the loud things. It is just some one minute
thing.
something Salom said, something Doc said, something that just flashed across the screen. Maybe something even during a wow moment, and you're like, that is it. It sometimes comes from an unexpected source. Matthew, closing thoughts from the organizer's perspective.
It's refreshing to see that behind the scenes, people will call you and say, this is what I learned. How do I do this? Do follow-up questions. And you realize that it's not just about the wow moment, the hypes, but deep down people's heart, they are really willing to learn and they want guidance. And so it helps, again, because we have the Springboard clubs on campus that will mentor these people daily and then weekly so that they can get to their destination.
Fantastic. Let me sign off by saying that if you are a young person into app development, you are into software development, technology solutions, and you have something you've done, you are looking for somebody to just give you a little encouragement, a little push, this is where you should keep your attention. On this platform, the digital revolution is our conversation for the whole year. So if you have done something that you are saying, will somebody just listen to me or give me a chance? Please keep your ears tuned in, because we will give you every chance we can to succeed. Coming up next is a Walk with Jesus, and the topic is the purposeful life, and it's a review of a book on timeless principles of finding fulfillment at old age. And the guest is Pastor Evans Osei Sabiaku, and the host is Reverend Ransford Abose. I want to say a big thank you to you all for joining us, and to Matthew, to Petra, and to Jojo. My name is Albert Okran. God bless you, and God bless you. Good night.
Where we go, wrong decisions
of globalization, not the shakers and the movers.
That a great man was asked, how do you bring up children? And he said, the first is by example, the second by example, and the third by example.
What are the top 10 things?
Albert, I should confess to you, it's a very difficult subject you're handling.
If you ever found Kelly anywhere sitting on a stool, the three legs of those two are faith, truthfulness, and enjoyment. Please don't pull any of these legs out. If you do, you will fall.
10 years of reviewing the past, situating the present, and predicting the future. Springboard, your virtual university, matriculates at 7 p.m. and graduates at 8 p.m. every Sunday on Joy 99.7 FM.
Springboard is a very significant intervention in our national life. The radio program, the virtual university, and the road show have become important factors in the development of our human capital.
Springboard is brought to you by Legacy and
financial freedom for yourself and your families.
Springboard, your personal value will shoot up.
Here's where we turn around.